I'm Edie Lush, and I'm here at the Hub Pavilion in Davos. Very pleased to be joined now by Jasmine Whitbread. She's the Chief Exec of Save the Children International. Tell me how your issues are getting across in Davos.
Well, it was interesting because I was polled as a delegate. All the delegates were polled about the issues that they most wanted to discuss. And, heading up an organisation like Save the Children, not surprisingly, I put right at the top of my list social inequality. It's something that, we think about all the time. But it turns out that that's the issue that most delegates wanted, or the delegates most wanted to discuss. So actually I feel that I'm, tapping into quite a seam here, and I'm finding that people are perhaps a little bit more responsive than they've been in past years.
So what does that actually mean for some of your work with corporates or with different companies? How does that
Well, so for example, last year at Davos, there was a lot of focus on India, and I remember being at a panel where one of the audience asked the panelists, and it was all about how India's rising and all of its successes, and a question was raised around what about the fact that at the time nearly 2 million children are still dying before their 5th birthday in India, and what kind of investment are you making in your own human capital? And the moderator just kind of like glossed over the question as if it hadn't happened. It was sort of like, woo, that's, you shouldn't be raising things like that here. Whereas this year, I'm finding that, that's a much more receptive, I don't know if you saw the headline on the FT this morning, which was around growth strong in India, but yet to reach the poorest.
Right.
So I think people are more willing to explore the issue of inequality. And of course that's important to us because one of our big campaigns is around stopping children dying before their 5th birthday. Those numbers have come down in India in the last year, which is great, but not at the rate that they need to meet the Millennium Development Goal that we at Save the Children have really pledged to do everything in our power, both by working on the ground, but also by campaigning, using social media and other ways to really get that message across, to build the pressure on the decision makers and politicians to get them to act.
So have you seen a social media campaign, for example, that's been effective in getting politicians or in getting companies to act in some of your
Yeah, I mean, obviously it works differently in developed and developing countries, but just recently Save the Children ran a campaign, it was called Blogadesh, and we took some blogging mummies in the UK who have a huge following already, they're just ordinary mums, but they've built a very big kind of following of people for their Twitters and their blogs, etc., using social media. And we asked them if they would like to come with us to Bangladesh to meet other, mums and kids in Bangladesh and just experience some of these issues themselves, where there has been very high mortality rates, but Bangladesh, with their own initiatives and also with support from international aid, have managed to get those rates coming down. And that, I think we reached millions of people through that program, both through Twitter, but then also, as we know, that gets picked up by the mainstream media, and I think we got 75 million on the broadcast media. That in turn enabled us to reach out, in the UK, Nick Clegg, who pledged to double the number of mothers and children that the UK government is pledging, to address, introduce programs to save their lives in the year ahead. And Britain plays quite an important role as an international donor, one that other rich countries listen to. So that kind of shows how you can build towards kind of changing policies around, for example, how aid money is spent by building that kind of a grassroots movement. And those mummies, they could choose themselves what they wanted to write about. We just set the thing up. And then we said, you choose how you want to use those facts and how you want to convey it. And people can relate to them because they're not celebrities, and they're just people that people can think, wow, that could be me looking after that little baby in Bangladesh who, might die because they just haven't had, the treatment for pneumonia for, $8 or whatever. And people really get, emotional about that, want to do something about that.
That's fascinating. So how does some of the campaign work that you're doing go into a country like Haiti, where we've heard so much about the poverty and the continuing, how long has it been going on? We still haven't solved it. How does some of your work going on there?
Well, at the moment, of course, it's very much still an emergency response phase. We've been in Haiti for many, many years. And in fact, we were working on child health and hunger issues. In fact, a third of all child deaths, I talked about It's 8 million children a year who die before their 5th birthday. A third of all those deaths are nutrition related. Right. So we've been working, our long-term development programs work on those kinds of issues. In an emergency, suddenly you've got a very vulnerable population, where frankly, we've seen in developed countries what happens when an emergency strikes. Even countries like the US weren't able to cope with Katrina, for example. But in a very poor country with a chaotic setup, even in the best of times, it has been very, very difficult. I mean, a lot of progress has been made. The other area we work on is around education. We're not just interested in saving children's lives. We want to make sure that they get they get a chance in life, and then they're not going to really do that unless they get a basic education. And in Haiti, people really do value education. So one big part of our emergency response has been getting 45,000 children back into school who wouldn't otherwise in sort of makeshift schools after the earthquake. So a lot of progress has been made, but it's still an emergency situation. We saw with the cholera outbreaks, you've still got people living in tented areas, in very basic situations. What we're saying is this is a marathon, not a sprint. I think people were sort of hoping for quick fixes. I think we all knew that this is going to take years to get people, and hopefully not back to where they were, but actually the motto is build back better. So we want to make sure that the new schools going up are built with simple earthquake protection construction, so that they don't all collapse in the same way as they did before.
Jasmine, I'd like to talk all day, but we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for coming into the Pavilion here in Davos, and I'm Edie Lush.